Welcome to the Dharma Talks in Ojochal. We're on Ruthie's patio again. We've had a couple of weeks of a break due to some special interest blockings of the road in Costa Rica, but we're back online and hopefully we can do this. Our topic today is right concentration. Mark's going to lead us in that, but we welcome the few people that are here, socially distancing and wearing masks, and then those of you that cannot be here, happy to have you be on our YouTube channel. Is there something else I was supposed to say?
I'll be back.
Oh, yes. Ruthie will be back next week with a talk. She's still cultivating it in her mind. And but just those of you who have been concerned about her, she's doing well and feeling stronger after the surgery on Monday. So she's here with us, and she's not in a wheelchair. She's nothing. She's like spicy as ever. In a Buddhist way, of course. So welcome. Happy to have you here. I'm going to turn this over to Mark.
Thanks, Jim. Spicy as ever. I love it. Okay. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, we're going to be talking about a noble focus and a concentration. And the space in between the talking may sound like I'm not focused, but actually I am. What I'm allowing is I'm just allowing words to come as they come, and this is part of the focus. But before we get into all that, just a couple of things. First thing, what is really the difference between like a right focus, right concentration, and noble? And I feel that the definitions that I shared with me were that in the English language, right felt right. But I feel really what we're looking for is something more noble. And by noble, what we're experiencing is a delicate sensitive focus. Sorry, I'm just noticing the feedback. The noble focus encourages us to be clean, clear, and aware all at the same time. Right focus, I feel, tries to get us to do something that may not feel accurate to us. If I'm trying to be right, I must be wrong. Whereas noble focus, if I am just noble, I am noble. And anything that occurs within that meditation happens just fine. I'd like to start today with a very common meditation. Normally when we're talking about meditation and we want to focus our minds, we like to go to the breath. And today is going to be very similar to that. And if you've done this one before, great. If it's new to you, great. That's fine. We're going to just come into our breath, close our eyes. Not right now. I'll explain it. I'll just walk you into it. And you're going to do something very simple. You're going to count your breaths. And you're going to count from 20 down to 1. Simple. Except if you're counting down to 1 and you lose track, or your mind wanders, or you start thinking about something at home, or which is common, we all do that, you have to start at 20 again. And so what you're trying to do is you're just trying to stay with your breath so that you're aware of your breath and breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. If that worked for you, out through the nose is just fine. And in your mind, in your heart, you're just counting 20, 19, all the way down to 1. And we'll do this for, say about 5 minutes. See if you can make it all the way down to 1. If you can, do it again. Keep doing it until we chime at about 5 minutes, and then we'll continue on. So if you're ready, getting comfortable, relaxing your body, settling into your breath. And settling into your breath just means that you're becoming aware of your breath. Some 20,000 times today you're going to breathe. These next few minutes you're actually going to be focused on soft gaze or eyes closed. Breathing in through the nose. Soft exhalation. When you're ready It's okay if your mind is wandering. Staying with the numbers. Focusing on your breath. And time to come back. I'm willing to go out on a limb here and suggest that the first round of counting down from 20, that you probably got reasonably far before you had to recount, if you had to recount. But as each minute went by, it became harder. Is that fair? And it's
I was the opposite too. I got worse as we moved.
She got worse as it went along.
yeah, absolutely
Yeah, but lost concentration.
right. It makes sense because in the beginning, the focus is really easy. If I tell you to focus on a word right now, then you'll focus on it. But for me to ask you to continue focusing on it, things become a little bit more difficult. And this actually makes sense because one of the hardest things for us to do is in meditation is to master our own thoughts. We seem to think that our thoughts actually master us, and in reality, that's not true. The reality is that we are the master of our own mind and our own thoughts. So the more I tell you about noble focus, the more I'm engaging your mind. The more I'm engaging your mind, the more you start thinking about things. The more you start thinking about things, the less you're paying attention to what I'm talking about or the meditation itself. Which is why when we're doing the meditation, I only offered little snippets, little reminders. Hey, are you still here with us? Are you in the meditation? And this is one of the things about focus that is key. How can you just stay on point? I have a personal story I'd like to share with you. When I last saw Jeff, I was telling him about this story, and we felt it might be worthwhile sharing here today. My meditation practice started very early, 12, 13 years old, and I didn't have a teacher. I just had an idea that I could do it, and I started doing it. That's not the story. The story is, as I got into my early 20s, my father got cancer. And one of the things that he chose to do was to settle his affairs before he left. And he was told that he only had 3 months to do it. And he chose not to see anybody else. He just wanted everybody to remember him the way he was. And he asked me if it would be okay if he could live with me for the remaining 3 months of his life. And I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I said yes. And so we're in tight quarters, and you can get a sense of things. But he couldn't settle his affairs in 3 months. And what he ended up doing is developing a meditative practice. And he wasn't trained in meditation. He wasn't a Buddhist. But what he did was he found that if he took any of the drugs that they gave him to ease the pain, he couldn't think, he couldn't focus. And so what he decided to do is he decided to meditate for 3 hours, do an hour worth of work, 3 hours, do an hour worth of work. And he would continue this process until he either fell asleep, and if he woke up again, then he would start the process all over again. And he did it for 1.5 years. He lasted much longer than the 3 months. And so to watch somebody go through that intense focus, that intense ability to put everything else aside so that you could just maintain body sensation, maintain clarity of mind, when distraction is the one thing that is just rampant in your life, was an incredible lesson for me. And it's something that I now engage in a lot for myself, in the awareness that when it comes time for me to do a sincere, deep meditation, having had that first-hand experience of seeing what's possible, I know that if I can find something that is more important than the distraction, if I can find something that is infinitely more profound than the plaguing thought, I'm able to stay on point. It's a motivation. It's a clarity. Because as you probably noticed when you were doing your meditation, you probably had 2 stories running. One story was 20, 19, 18, and in the background was 20. Oh, and by the way, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder how long we're going to have to do this for. I wonder how long it's been already. I think I need to move my toe. 16. There's these 2 stories that are running. And this is going to happen in a lot of meditation, especially when we start into the beginning of our meditation. It becomes these dual stories. The key, though, is staying focused on what it is that you're focusing on, in this case, the number of the breath or whatever. What ends up happening is that background story will start to soften. It starts to release its hold on you because it recognizes, well, you're not listening to me anyway. I'll go off and do something else. And things become more profound for you. One of the things that we learn about our mind is when we give it something to work on, it works on it. So if I give my mind something negative to work on, a negative situation, something's affected me in some way, my mind is going to work away, and it's going to come up all the permutations on why everything that I feel about this negativity is accurate. Equally, same situation, but I choose to take it on the positive side, it's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to work away, and show me all the positive reasons why it's going to work. It's me on what I want to focus on. So really, the secret about mastering the mind and mastering this primal direct focus is not engaging your mind to master your mind. It goes something like this. I really need to master my mind. So I'm going to focus, and I'm talking to myself, I'm going to focus on these glasses. I'm going to focus on these glasses because this is what I'm focusing on. I'm going to focus on these glasses for like 5-10 minutes. Easy. Well, maybe like I'll do it for 7 minutes, but I'm going to focus on these glasses for 7 minutes. Maybe I'll do it for 4 minutes. I'll focus for 4 minutes. The mind can't be involved in it. Let the mind just be something that floats in the background. Many of you have experienced this. You've walked into a home or into a store and there's background music playing. And someone say, oh, you hear that song? And you're like, what song? You say, can't you hear the music? Oh, I don't pay attention to that. That's not what we do with our mind. It's just background chatter, background noise, but we put a lot of focus into it. So if we know that our mind is the interface between how we actually feel, our experience here in the physical, and the world that we're experiencing around us, if it's that interface, then it helps to know that we probably get a little bit confused by it as well. Why? Because we're picking up all of the information, everything that happens, everything that we see. And as I said in the very beginning, the fact that I'm talking about noble focus, I'm giving you things to consider to focus on, but I'm also engaging your mind and distracting you. But a fascinating thing happens. I'm pretty sure that most of us that are here right now are not 20 years old, but we can remember when we were 20 years old. And when we were given an idea or a concept, our mind just sucked that up and it stayed in there, and we could recall it in a moment's notice for the most part. But as decade went by, we started to notice that there was a lot more information that we were getting. And with that information, what ends up happening is we now take an idea, a concept, a belief, we bring it in, and rather than just put it into one file and close that filing cabinet, it actually moves into probably 8 or 10 or 15 or 100 different files. Because it says blue. Oh, blue matches water, blue matches air, blue matches this, and blue matches that. And it becomes very hard to recall unless we have a specific moment why blue is important. This is where I'd like to just bring you back to the focus. If you were to focus on something like blue, it helps to focus on an aspect of it. Let me rephrase. You probably have many different versions of blue throughout your life. And if I were to ask you a question about something and the color was blue, and I'm talking about plates and somebody else is talking about airplanes, you might not come up with the blue because it's not easily tangible or reachable. Are you with me? If I lost anybody here? Okay. What I'm saying to you is that when it comes to the focus, it helps to only focus on one thing because your mind is going to want to focus on all the applications of blue. And that's where it gets confusing. And so, for example, if I were to focus on these glasses, I wouldn't be thinking about sunglasses. I wouldn't be thinking about ski goggles. My focus is only on these glasses. I let it be solely on these glasses right here. When I'm counting down from 20, 19, 18, oh, I remember when I was 18, no. Focusing on the number 17, 16, 15. Oh, 15, that's the time I got my... Am I making sense? Good, okay, I got you back again. Our mind likes to process, and I really am going somewhere here. Our mind likes to process through two different areas. We have our upper or higher mind and our lower mind. And essentially, when we start into this focusing, sorry about the feedback, as we move into this focusing, we start kind of with the lower mind. And the lower mind is usually engaged by things like social media, news media. It is a linear thought process, A plus B plus C, and so on. It likes to look into the past. It likes to explore the past. And as it explores the past, it does it from the perspective of yourself. You are the first person in that story. Unfortunately, the past is confused with emotions and mistruths. So as you tend to look into your past, you tend to become fearful of something, or you might even find yourself getting angry or upset about something that happened to you, or maybe something you've done. And so if you're experiencing this in the beginning of your meditation, you know where you are in your meditation. And this is where the focusing of the mind becomes most acute. You know you're moving into higher mind when you start moving into things like gratitude, grace, compassion, understanding, because the higher mind, the upper mind, works in a timelessness. And in that timelessness, there is no past, there is no future, there is only this moment. We recognize that a series of events have occurred to lead us to this moment. We know that whatever we do in this moment is going to lead us into the future moments. But all we have is this moment. And that somehow releases everything for you. This is where the bliss that Ruthie likes to talk about. This is where we start to find the bliss. It starts to come into play. And if you're not there, it's okay. It just means that you are required to focus a little bit more. Well,
Can I make
please,
a comment? The lower and the higher mind, and maybe you can reinforce whether this is an accurate way to think about it. But if the lower mind is linear and very very grounded in the current circumstances and in the recent history, the higher mind, when you talk about kindness and compassion and those kind of things, is it not circular versus linear? That's how I experience it. That when I am paying attention to my higher being, to my higher thinking, and those things, it circles around, and it's okay. It's much more of a glide than the linear thing, which feels like more like a roller coaster. To me, I don't know if that does that make sense with what you're saying?
Yeah, it does. For me, when I hear what you're saying, for me, when I find myself in the higher mind, it feels like I've walked into a wide open room with no walls. And everything just becomes expansive. I'm aware of self, which I will come into in a few moments, but I'm aware of self, but I'm aware that I'm also not attached to anything or any particular concept. Ruthie, is there something you wanted to add?
No.
Okay. Okay. But yes, that's circular. Definitely I can see that because
Circles have more space in them.
yeah.
And lines are flat.
Yeah.
Line is like a flat thing, and so your open room is the same thing as me saying the big circle that you're joining in. And I prefer the big circle, but my mind many times prefers the line.
Well,
I get trapped.
It makes more sense.
I get trapped in the drama of the line.
Yeah. Well, it does because, especially the way we're raised, and certainly in North America, the way that we're raised, is we're taught to think things through, and there's a natural progression of events. This leads to this, leads to this, and then how many times when you have something that doesn't go awry, or especially when you were younger, the first thing that somebody will say to you is, "What were you thinking?" And that's like, well, but I wasn't. Well, you should have been. You should have been thinking about this, and you should have been thinking about that. And so now we're getting into our meditation, and somebody's saying, "What are you thinking?" And you're saying, "Well, I was thinking about this and that." And they're saying, "No, you shouldn't be. Don't think about that. And so this progression it's hard to get out of. It's kind of ingrained in us. I like the idea of the circle because as you move away and you move into that timelessness, if you start to come back, because there are ebb and flows within the meditation, that you're going to come back almost into that linear point where it wants to straighten up again, and you go, no, we're going this way again. And so you're breathing into that and focusing, and then you're moving in. And then as it comes back around again, you're making the choice to continue this process going around.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, yeah, Ruthie?
Oh, I just said we were talking about
Speak up.
linear versus circular. An easy way to think about that is the horizon. You feel like you're flat, but you're going around.
Mm,
So in your thinking, even though you think you're on a linear thought, if you stay with it, you're going to come back to the original.
mhm.
Right? In other words, if you keep going in a straight line, you'll always be feeling like you're linear, but you're going to end up right back
The world isn't flat.
here. No,
Oh.
sorry, Dharm. I'm sorry, but it's you know, if you're working on your meditation, the best part is the fifth out of 7 steps.
Agreed.
And it comes after you've established mindfulness and awareness.
Exactly.
And then then you let go, and the thoughts just go round and round. The music goes round and round.
So just in case you couldn't hear what Ruthie was saying, if I can capsulize and you'll let me know if I drift. Ruthie is saying that there is a linear part that if you stay on it long enough, it'll actually take you around, as Jeff was saying, into the circle and bring you right back to the original thought. You feel like you're in a linear progression. However, you're actually going to end up where you started with your original thought at some point.
And the trick then is to see that at that point as if for the first time.
And then she's saying that also to see that as the first time, that as soon as you get to that point, you're like, oh, back here.
Beginner's mind.
You're back to, as she puts it, the beginner's mind. Thanks. The reason we're talking about the different versions of this is because everybody's going to have their own experience in focusing. Everybody is going to have their same experience in focusing. And in that focusing, it helps to find the things that work for you. So you have this collection of information, you have a collection of thoughts, you have a collection of sensations. All of this is going on at the same time. However, you are looking for a singular focus, something that is important to you. We also know that by chanting, by by holding a particular toning, holding a particular note. For those that have tinnitus, you have actually an inner centering point to listen at. Just listen to the tinnitus. Let that be your focus. These are all tools to help you get there, but as you start to do this more and more, you'll move away from more of the distraction of the mind, from the other focus in the mind, more into a singular focus. And the more that you begin to do this, you begin to find this point easier, quicker, and simpler each time. But how do we prepare? One of the things that when I'm teaching a deep meditation, especially to people that are coming to meditation for a particular focus they would like to achieve something, is there's really just 3 things that I like to address. The first thing I like to address is, are you aware of your surroundings? What brings you to your meditation? That's the focal point. That second part is, what is in your surrounding when you're meditating that's going to distract you? Telephones, somebody in the hallway, etc., etc. And then the third thing is, are you prepared? Now, if I were to ask you to run the Boston Marathon, you probably wouldn't wear dancing shoes and scuba gear. It doesn't make sense. But it's amazing how many people go running into their meditation full tilt with an incredibly busy mind and sit down and go, okay, calm. it's too hard for us to make that jump, that leap. And so that if we know that we are excited, and we know that we have a lot going on, and we know that we would like to find that singular focus again, it also helps to give yourself a little bit of leeway in the sense that when you sit down, you know it's going to take a few minutes for you to calm down. It's going to take a little bit of time for that energy to dissipate. And if your mind is wandering and bouncing and moving around, it would be natural, wouldn't it? This is where our singular focus finds its breath. We're able to recognize this distraction is going on, but at the same point too, come now into that singular focus. Whatever that singular focus is, my breath, a tone, a noise, a word, an image, and I let that be my focal point. The mind is still calming down, the hamsters are still on the wheel, things are still happening, but they'll slow down. And this is where patience steps into the focus. We're not in a rush to do anything. Fortunately, the Buddha has given us some tools to prepare for this. We know that a very busy mind can be considered as suffering. Anybody who is locked into deep thought, deep considerations, trying to solve a personal problem, they're usually in some form of duress. Fascinatingly enough, the body, when it feels these situations, it doesn't know that what's occurring. Even though I'm trying to remember something, I'm focusing on something that happened in the past, my body doesn't know that this isn't occurring present time. From my body's perspective, my body will start to clench, it'll tighten, it'll defend itself, the heart will start beating faster, the eyes will become more focused, I'll breathe into the upper part of the lungs, and my stomach will tighten. Thus giving me the feedback that whatever I am focusing on is worthy being scared of, being afraid of, and that I need to do something with it. Interestingly enough, as I come into my breath and I start to relax, my body will also start to relax. I may have sensations and pains, I may have little glitches, they will pass. My mind may still be chirping, it will pass. But as I start to get deeper into my meditation, into that singular focus, my body will relax, thus telling me that I am actually achieving something, that I'm actually moving away from my discomfort and moving into comfort. And so here we have this little tidbit that if I am gripping, I'm tight, I'm holding, I'm clenching, I know that I'm still not in that sweet spot. And it's just a little sign for me to relax a little bit more. To let my body know everything's going to be okay. You can actually say it. We're okay. We're just sorting something out. I actually don't need you to process at this point. One of the signs that you know that things are going in the right direction is what I like to call tummy chanting. You're going to start to feel like your stomach is starting to gurgle. And if you're in a group, that can be embarrassing. But in reality, what it's doing is your body is now moving into a state of repair. It's taking things from the stomach and moving it into those areas that need restoration, which is calming and relaxing. You find your breath comes down to the lower part of the chest. Eyes soft gaze. I said that the Buddha helped us with this, and we know that from our suffering, we know that there is suffering in the world. We know that usually we are the cause of our own suffering, and that we can be the cessation of our own suffering. And once we've established that we are the cause of our own suffering, then we can develop a practice by which we can alleviate further suffering. And this is where we move into the Eightfold Path. And when we look at all of the aspects of the Eightfold Path, we recognize that each one is not singular unto itself, rather they are a collection. And as I mentioned before when we were talking about this meditation, where are your thoughts, where's your surroundings, and how are you looking after your body? These are the things I feel that the Buddha is talking about. Right focus becomes a culmination of all of these points into one singular point. Right thought, right livelihood, how am I being affected by those things as I bring them back to my cushion? How am I looking after my body? How I connect with other people? All of that is coming to my cushion. And so the calmer I am out in my world, the gentler I am out in my world, the way I interact with others out in the world, when I come back to the cushion, it's easier for me to come into that singular point of focus. And ease also, because I'm finding it easier to come back to that singular focus, it's easier for me to go back out into the world in balance, in that equanimity. I'm no longer drawn by the story. So if I can stay in my singular focus in my meditation, and I can carry that out into my life, there's a higher probability that those things that I respect in life, that I appreciate in life, aspects that I would appreciate in my life, they will start to appear. The only thing that really is required at this point is patience.
Kind of an evolution into that higher mind,
Absolutely.
right? That becomes more and more of the way you operate. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the evolution. We know that there are many different levels of our meditation in right focus when we get into it. The beginner will have these epiphany moments, these aha moments, and they might only last like 2 minutes or 5 minutes, but in those 2 minutes or 5 minutes and they step into that timelessness, it feels like an eternity. And then they're like, okay, that was great, I want to do that again. They go running in and sit down and try to do the same thing over again. But as time goes on, and that practice becomes more of an expression and it deepens, these things start to occur naturally within the process, to the point where at a certain point, as you mentioned, you just get into these higher states of awareness and things make a lot more sense. You're no longer struggling in the lower mind. So if we're going to prepare ourselves for it, right view helps. What am I focusing on? What are the things that I'm going to be bringing into my life on a regular basis? Right intention. Well, if I can see what's happening in my world and I'm making a choice of what I'd like to do. My intention is to be a certain way and I'm going to embrace that. And again, my focus will help me with that. Right speech. Is my languaging actually supporting the outcomes that I would prefer in my life? Am I actually saying the things that are really important or necessary? Right livelihood, we talked about that a while ago. Am I doing anything that's going to bring question to me? If I'm going to go out and I'm going to earn a living, is it going to be at the expense of somebody else? Because if it is, that's going to be distracting when I'm sitting on the cushion. Right mindfulness, again, this is a collection of all of these different rights, noble. And the mindfulness is just the awareness that our actions do have consequences, or they do have reverberations. And that we are aware that what we are doing and saying and being will have an effect on us in return. All of this brings us to the right focus. If we have found ourselves in a place where we feel comfortable with all of those attributes, we've discovered the suffering, we've identified the cause of the suffering, we've identified a way to move beyond suffering, whether it's a collective group or a singular particular event. And we recognize that there were a series of actions that we brought into it, that created it, that we were involved in some way. And we can now look at those events through all of these different aspects within the Eightfold Path. We now have found a way to resolve a lot of our problems, a lot of our situations, and we can now copy this into other events as they tend to appear. The key point is being singularly focused. And so, what is a singular focus that is important to you? What is worth that much dedication, that much time on the cushion? I mean, for my father, it was pretty obvious. My father, his focus was life. His focus, every single breath became important. Every single pain sensation that all occurred within him, there were different forms of cancer, became important. His ability to be able to be accurate, right speech, right action, right focus was paramount in order for that 1 hour opportunity he could finish his business affairs. And he would hold on for as long as he possibly could until he couldn't anymore. And then he'd go back into his meditation. There is something about right focus that is of note. And that is, it is because we're human, it's very easy to get distracted. A leg goes to sleep, a hitch when you're breathing, it's like, oh, you want to release that. There are little things where the mind is always going to step in. And our role as meditators is to see beyond that, feel beyond that. Know that they're going to occur. We're going to have ebb and flows as we have ebb and flows in our life. We have ebb and flow in our meditation. There are going to be times where it's just so easy. You just sit there, you're in perfect form, your breath is rhythmic, it's rounded, and everything's great. And you think, I can stay this way forever. And the minute you say that, you recognize you're on the slide back down to thinking mind and everything else. These things, they happen. When we mentally stumble, when our focus becomes confused, I encourage you to reward yourself, to applaud yourself, because you recognize the series of events that led you to back into the thinking mind. Smile. Smile like, oh, I caught it. Let's begin again. If we move down into the lower mind and chastise ourselves, or get angry at a dripping tap, or confused, it's going to make us harder. It's going to make it harder for us to find that focus. But I can tell you that the one thing that will happen in that focus, two things. One, that your ability to remain focused on your intention or that point will get easier. Whatever that is, it gets so much easier. To the point now where you sit down on your cushion, and as you're sitting down, your body's already getting relaxed, and it's like, oh, I know exactly where we're going. This is going to feel wonderful. The other thing that ends up occurring is that there's going to be a resulting tranquility. And that tranquility gets longer and longer the more you do it. You don't lose anything by meditating only for 2 minutes in a day. If you can meditate for 2 hours or 4 hours, great. But any amount that you can dedicate to your practice, to singular focus, is going to benefit you every single day. We mentioned that the lower mind likes to look at things as being linear. Your meditation practice is not a linear practice. How do we know? Some days are easier. We talked about the ebb and flow back and forth. There are times when it's just easy. A beautiful, soft, rainy day. Everything is tranquil and quiet. And your cushion calls and you sit down. It's very easy to drift into singular focus. But being in the center of a city where the Super Bowl is being played, maybe not so much. But expecting yourself to have the same reaction every single time is unfair to yourself. Just noticing how long you can hold that singular focus. It's a gift to yourself, melting into it and allowing it and only it to support you. Jeff?
I have many things I'm thinking of.
Okay.
I will share one.
Please.
As Mark was talking, it reminds me of I'm from Jugglers, I know how to juggle, but I'm from people who juggle 6 things at a time, and we're really skilled. We're really skilled. We all know how to juggle. And what it strikes me that what you were talking about with right concentration is the same 6 balls sitting kind of in a row and picking up one at a time and giving it the attention it deserves. Rather than, oh yeah, this one, then this one. It seems so much simpler when I see that picture.
That's a good match.
When I see that picture instead of the juggling picture, which you have to have a lot of skill and a lot of energy and those things. This seems so calm to pick up one of those balls and focus on it.
Mm-hmm.
Put it down, breathe, pick up another ball. And you know, a lot of life feels complicated and complex and multifaceted and all those things. And it is. But what we do with it is whether we add to the complexity or whether we simplify it so that it becomes, here's the word, manageable.
Mm-hmm.
And it strikes me that focus creates manageability and peace.
Absolutely. And you know, when we look at the Eightfold Path and we look at each of those objects, it gives us the ability to pick that one ball up, and through those 8 different ways of looking at it, well, 7 because you're focusing on it, you're able to see and feel something about this particular ball, this truth that makes sense to you. And as you come to the understanding and appreciation of what this particular ball is, as you're putting it back down, you immediately, it permeates into the other balls. And you immediately begin to see answers where there might have only been confusions or questions before. So it, you know, as we were saying at the very beginning of the talk, when we have a new concept, it goes into all of these different file folders and all of these different places. Well, here's a point where we're taking a singular focus and allowing it to permeate into all of those different areas, rather than trying to extrapolate all of those different areas into an expression. Thanks. That was a really good point.
That's the picture I was seeing.
One of the things that has been a repeating theme through this, Ruthie and Jeff have mentioned, and they've certainly talked about it in other talks, is that the more that we are able to come to the cushion, into a singular point in the cushion, and sit and relax into our meditation, singularly focused, is that we are going to reach a deeper state of consciousness. It's inevitable. It's unavoidable, actually. And partly because it's a natural process, and two, because we're encouraged by it. When we can find those moments of tenderness, of grace, and an expansiveness, it encourages more of it. And so that process of that ebb and flow that we were talking about, picking up one ball and noticing how it permeates into all of the other balls. All of a sudden I pick this ball up, I put this one down, I pick this one up. My reaction time to resolving this one is faster. And now that I have 2 experiences and I pick up a 3rd ball, the reaction time is even faster. And this is what happens with our meditation. We develop this practice to find truths, and in those truths, we are able to bring those truths from the cushion, from our meditation, from the singular focus out into the world, and see how those truths also can support us. And support us. The only other thing that I'd like to add, 5 minutes? Yeah. Wow. Okay. Apparently I can talk. Emotions. They're about the only thing that will derail the whole process. And your singular focus is a singular focus. You may have sensations, beliefs, or stories. Again, remember that was the lower mind that goes into the past and wants to justify a story. If you feel an emotion coming up, as I said a few weeks ago, this is where you grit your teeth and you just focus in a little bit more. You make that in. Remember at the beginning when you were doing your countdown, you had these 2 stories going, but if you just focus on the number 20, 19, 18, as you're breathing, and you're allowing that to be your singular focus, I'm sure find great joy awaits.
Want to open it up for a few minutes?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
I have a comment on your last thing that you said.
Juggler?
No,
No, Marks.
Yeah, Marks.
Yeah.
You know, talking about focus, and not letting other emotions getting involved. I recently read a book called The Heart Map Solution, and found it very, very interesting. One of the exercises that they suggested was to meditate. Use some type of music in the background that you like. Do it for like 15 minutes, at a time. But to concentrate on something that you really love,
Mm-hmm.
and think, of how you feel. And feel how you feel when you think about that thing that you really love.
Mhm.
And then you also, because you're also breathing, or you're consciously kind of breathing in and out your heart space.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do that. And so they did studies where people did this like once a day, and it was just amazing, the results that these people got from taking 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, it all takes about 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm just going to repeat because for the people that wouldn't have been able to hear you. So what's been suggested is, it was Heart Math, right?
Your heart math solution.
Yeah, Heart Math Solutions was suggesting that having a music playing as you sit down, and then just your primary focus actually becomes something that you love, you absolutely love, and you become aware of your breath, and you become more centered and focused in that regard. Did I repeat that?
Right, but you're breathing in and out of that heart space.
Yeah, you're breathing in and out of the heart space. Yeah.
Very nice.
Mhm. Okay, well, we have a couple of minutes. We have 3 minutes? Let's try counting from 20 down to 1. Just do it once. And so you're probably finding that your body is already calmer. I've given you some considerations. Let those considerations just float away in your mind. No need to be attached to them. And when you're ready, begin your breath and your count to 20, and see if it's easier this time. and time to come back.